Hello everyone, I'm Laura and I am the owner of the Fox's Tail. Today I'm going to be giving you a video tutorial step by step on how to make mask covers to help combat COVID-19 and to send off to your medical professionals in need. I started a Facebook group because someone had requested for me to make some masks and I just wanted to field some interest. It quickly grew. We have over 3,000 members right now. And I did a couple Facebook Lives on there with step-by-step tutorials. And so this is just to further share how to make the masks. Let me reiterate that these are mask covers that we're making. We're using a pattern adapted by Craft Passion. They're the original pattern. And so this pattern that we're using has just been scaled up. Seam allowance has been included. It's much bigger, so you can see here, this is a finished one. But the great thing about it being big is it goes over those N95 masks that healthcare providers are in short supply of, prolonging the life of those masks. The original Craft Passion pattern makes one that's much smaller and tighter to the original face. We're making these mask covers with insert pockets for filters. So if you make the small size and you can put a filter in it, it'll still be effective. These are in no way a replacement for actual medical equipment. They're just used to prolong the life of them. So in this video, I'm just going to be showing you how to make the larger version. All right, it comes equipped with ties and a little channel inside to add a nose clip. All right. So first thing you're going to want to do is download your pattern and print it out. Be sure to check with the scale that it is the correct size. You'll see here that there's a line for the lining and a main cut line. All right. And I'll show you how to cut it in just a second. If you're going to be making lots of these, it's a good idea to go ahead and transfer that pattern onto a piece of manila or a cardstock, something sturdier, so that you can get lots of use out of your pattern. I did two, one with the main cut line and then one with the lining cut line, so you can see, well, that's better. You can see that they're different. All right. So I've got myself a piece of washed cotton. You can do a cotton-cotton poly blend, something with a not too loose of a weave so that it protects. And I'm just going to fold it in half with right sides together. I'm going to take my main pattern and lay it on here. You're going to want to make it parallel to the grain, where your ear side here is straight in line with the grain. Okay, so I'm just going to lay it on here, hold it down with my hand. If you're using just the piece of paper, you can pin it to your pattern if that, or your fabric if that makes it easier. I'm just going to use a pencil to mark around. Don't have to get fancy here. If you want to use a different marking utensil, go for it. I have a pencil at hand, so that's what I'm using. All right, after I mark around the pattern, I've got a line here. I'm just going to put a couple of pins to secure it for when I cut, because I'm cutting through 2 layers. And I don't want them to move around. All right, so a couple pins there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cut all the way around that line that I just marked. What's nice is the seam allowance is already included, so I don't have to worry about adding anything after the fact. There is a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance included into this pattern, so that's what you'll be stitching at. I'm just going to cut all the way around as best we can. All right. And so now I've got my 2 front pieces. I can take my pins out. If you'd like to go ahead and pin it together, you can along the nose. That's going to be our first seam. I'm not much of a pinner these days, so I'm not going to worry about it. Then you're going to want to do the same thing with your lining fabric. I already have one cut out here, save time here. But you just make sure that you use either your other pattern, right? Or don't forget to fold back so that you cut for the lining. Okay. All right, so from here we're going to get to stitching. You can do these front and then lining, or you can do them at the same time. That is up to you. Get my sewing machine front and center. So we're going to want to remember some things about sewing. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seams for security and stability. And we're going to be sewing at 3/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to take and start at the nose, the top of the nose, and go around. Backstitching at the beginning and the end. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my front piece. Now, if you're planning on making a bunch of these, I would suggest you doing it in like a batch mode where you cut a bunch and then you sew one step, iron a bunch, and all that kind of thing. Make a assembly line out of it. All right, so now we've got both on our lining and on our front, this seam is sewn. So important step here is I'm going to do something called clipping the curve. And what that does is we're just going to do a little 1/2 inch clips, a 1/2 inch apart. We're going to clip about 1/8 of an inch away from our seam line. We do not want to cut the seam line. For obvious reasons. We don't want our beautiful stitching to get cut away. So I'm just going to put a little clip about 1/2 inch apart and about 1/4 inch away. Or, yeah, 1/4 inch away. All right, and that looks something like this. And what that does is when we turn it inside out, in any curve, it helps just kind of spread the seam allowance so it doesn't get puckery and bunchy. I'm going to do the same thing with the front. 1/2 inch away from each other and about 1/4 to 1/8 inch away from that stitch line. All right, done. And so we're going to switch over to the iron now. And we're going to just iron that seam. It's going to be difficult to iron it open unless you have a tailor's ham, or you can use the end of a ironing board or something like that. But I found that instead of ironing it open, if you start at the top of the nose side and kind of stick your iron in here, you can just iron it open to the side. I mean, it's not ironing it open, but you're ironing it over to the side. So you just kind of get a nice seam there. So it's pushed it over to the side, and we get a nice seam there. And so I'm going to do the same thing on this one. All right. And there's that one. Okay. Excellent. So from here, we're going to get our sewing machine back out, back up, and we're going to top stitch down this front curve edge. That's just going to hold the seam allowance in place and create a sturdy front. You don't have to be any sort of, way away from the line here. I'm just doing about 1/4 of an inch away. It's just holding that seam allowance in place. Now we've top stitched our lining and our front. All right. Da, da, da. Excellent. Okay, I'll leave that there. All right, so for the lining, this is something we're doing on the masks, is we're adding a little channel, like shown here, a little channel here to be able to add a little piece of metal to make a nose clip to make it cinch down. So what I've taken here is I have a little piece of kind of like a grosgrain type ribbon. You can use just a piece of fabric folded down if you want. You can use other types of grosgrain or twill tape. This is just something I had on hand. And I went ahead and folded back and ironed the ends so that I wouldn't have any raw edges. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a seam gauge or a ruler, slide it to the inch. I'm just going to take from the top of my nose down on the right side, so on the outside of it, and put a little mark at the 1 inch. All right, like that. Can you see? All right, and then I'm going to take my channel and lay the top of the channel centered on the line. The top of the channel will be centered on your seam line and will rest at the top of this line. Okay, so it's a little funny with the nose because it's a curve, but we're just going to center it on there and get it pinned in place so that it doesn't move anywhere. Put as many pins as you feel comfortable, what you need, to make sure it doesn't go anywhere since it is on this curve. For me, at this moment, is 3. All right, so now it's secure on there. You can see that top line there is my mark. I've got the top of my channel fit there, okay? So now we're just going to stitch along the top and along the bottom to secure that into place. Don't forget to take your pins out as you go. And as always, back stitch at the beginning and the end to keep it nice and secure. And then the same thing for the bottom. So at this point, if you have a piece of metal to stick in there, you can go ahead and stick it in and close it up. You can go ahead and close one end if you like, or you can just leave them open. It just depends on, where you're going to send these, what you're using it for. All right, just clip away all your threads. And there you have the nose channel already in the lining. All right, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to kind of close up the ear ends for our lining. So to do that, I need to bring the iron back over. And I have a nice little grid ironing board here, so I use it as a guideline. But if you need, you can use your seam gauge or ruler to make marks. But it's pretty simple measurements here. We're just going to take and we're going to fold it up 1/2 inch. Okay, and press. And then we're going to do one more fold on itself, so another 1/2 inch right up on itself. You can pin this in place, or you can just leave it. I find the pressing kind of holds it into place. And we're going to do the same thing with the other side. So we're going to fold it up 1/2 inch. And fold it right on top of itself, another 1/2 inch. Okay. We're going to take and we're going to stitch down this here. Okay. And do the same with the other side. And I ran out of bottom. Pretend sewing. Good thing I have another one on hand. And I'll be back in business. Alrighty, let's do that again. Alright, and then we'll trim our threads. Get them out of the way. Alright, so now essentially our lining is complete. We've got our nose channel, we've got our ear flaps on the side. So now we can go and we can take and attach it to our front. So with right sides together, we're going to nestle our seam allowances, and I like to pin at the center seam first. So we'll do that at the nose. Alright, and so because the lining is shorter than your front, which it's supposed to be, don't worry. So if by pinning at the center first, you make sure that you have good, straight, even lines, seams, whatever. And same thing with the other side. And then you can go ahead and pin the bottom too if you like. So go ahead and get those centered up on that center seam and pin out from the sides. Okay, and you can start on the top or the bottom either way. We're just going to do another 3/8 of an inch seam, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Don't forget to take your pins out as you go. And we'll do the same thing for the top. Okay, now we have our lining attached to our front. Before we turn it inside out, we're going to want to do another clipping around the corners, or curves, I should say. So same thing as before, 1/2 inch apart and about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch away from that seam line, just to give a little ease when we flip it around. All right, so the top curve is important to do, and you'll see the bottom, it kind of makes a little V. So we're just going to do a couple little clips on either side to release that pressure as well. Okay, and it'll look something like that when you're done. All right, now we can flip it inside out. We've got all of our threads out of the way. Okay, so we're going to flip it inside out. We're going to want to press our seams that we just made so they're nice and flat. And to do that, I'm just going to kind of scrunch them together, technical term, scrunch, and kind of roll it down so that they are nice and flat. And then I'll take the iron to it. Okay. You can see your front also has like a little flap tab. You can just kind of iron that down with it as well. So we're just going to iron along the top, roll it down as you need, and then we'll do the same with the bottom. Same with the bottom. Kind of roll it together. Again, if you have a sleeve board or a ham, feel free to use that. This is just my method at this time. That being said, we all have different ways of sewing. We're all taught different little things, so feel free to do what feels best for you. This is just one example. All right, so that's nice and ironed down, okay? Nice and flat. And now we can go ahead and take care of the ear sides for the front, all right? So in order to do that, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, basically. I'm going to fold down 1/2 inch and iron. But this time I'm going to take and I'm going to fold my next fold to meet the lining, okay? I'll press it in place and then I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I've taken, oh, it's hot there. I've taken and I fold down 1/2 inch and then I'm going to fold to meet the lining, okay? So it's not folding on top of the lining or under it, it's just right there to meet it. And what that's going to do is it's going to help create a pocket for a filter, all right? So I'm going to do that to the other side and then we'll stitch it down. So fold up 1/2 inch. And then we're going to fold it over one more time to meet the lining. This also creates a little channel on the ear side. You'll see, creates a little, once we stitch it down, you'll see better. It creates a channel. So if you wanted to put elastic in there instead of doing the ties, which I'm going to show you next, that's totally an option. Different people have different thoughts and feelings about what's best, elastic around the ears or ties, and we found the ties seem to we've received the most feedback from are good, but some people may still like the elastic. And the original Craft Passion pattern is for a channel for elastic as well. So if you go to that blog, you will see that on there. All right, so we're just going to stitch this channel down 1/4 inch away or so from the line, and back stitching at the beginning and end. All right, I will trim my threads, and so as you can see, just stitch there, right, creates the pocket. And this is the little channel I was talking about before, if you wanted to put elastic in. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. All right. And there we have it. So essentially, here you could add elastic if you want, but I'm going to show you how to do the ties because they're a little bit more convertible for different sizes and to fit over those original masks. So the ties themselves are going to look like this when they're finished. Okay, it's just a double fold over. And what we've done for that is taken width of fabric. Oh, here it is. So when I say width of fabric, I mean selvage to selvage. The selvage is this piece on the end, of your fabric here, the finished edges. So width of fabric just means straight across, from end to end. So what you can do is you can fold a piece of fabric in half end to end and cut 2 strips at 1.5 inches. If you have a rotary cutter, that's great. It's perfect for good straight lines. If you don't, you can use a ruler and just draw it and cut it out. So 2 strips width of fabric, 1.5 inches wide. And once you have those, which I've got one here. So see, selvages here. It's folded in half. I've got 1 strip. what you're going to want to do is fold the pieces into each other. Okay. Sometimes people have said that it helps if you fold it in half first, because then you have a line for the middle. Either way. So I just kind of fold it in and get it started. And once you get it started, you can kind of, train your fingers to go along. Okay, just like that. Now they do make different tools that make this a breeze, like for making bias tape, etc. But you just keep working along. And once you have that all the way down, folded together to the center, you're going to take and you're going to fold it on top of itself. All right. And press that down. Okay. So, fold it to the center, fold it on top of itself, and press it down. All right. You're going to do that with your strips. All right, so now you can take and you can stitch that down. I've got one already started here, just for ease and quickness on the video. So you can straight stitch, kind of down the center to the edge. You're just attaching it together and keeping it. Double folding it like that makes it nice and sturdy as well. I use straight stitch, so I don't have to change over my machine, but you can also do zigzag. And I have seen where some people take, if they have a serger, and have done ties that way as well. All right. Came unthreaded. Sewer's lament. All right. So I'm just going to get started here. And stitch all the way down. You can pin if you'd like. I find that if you just kind of hold it together, you get a flow and it'll just go for you. And you'll just stitch it all the way down. Folding in pieces as you need. And so now I've got one long tie. For the ties, they can be anywhere between 15 to 20 inches, just to get max convertibility, adjustability. So I'm just taking and cutting these in half and using them. All right, and so what we want to do is attach our straps to the mask. We're going to put one in each corner, just like this one here. And to do that, we're just going to tack it down in two places. Again, you can do this any way you want to be secure. This is just the way I'm showing you. So I'm going to stitch here and then here. Back stitching a couple of times. So what I do is I'm going to stitch forward, back stitch, and then stitch forward again, and that will be secure. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the edge. Forward, back, forward. All right, and then you're going to want to repeat that to all three other corners. And that is your, oh, no, it's not. Silly me. All right, once you have all of that done, and you can do this part before you attach the ties, but what we're going to want to do is top stitch along the bottom, the top and the bottom, okay? And so you're just going to follow along the edge, back stitch to secure the stitch, and you're going to want to go about 1/4 of an inch away from the top. And then the same thing for the bottom. have it top stitched along the top and the bottom. And so now you've got, once you complete putting your ties on, you'll have something that looks like this. An extra large N95 mask cover, complete with filter pocket and nose clip. All right, like I said before, this is just one pattern. This is one way to make a mask cover, and it is in no way a replacement for actual medical equipment. We've had a call to duty, sort of, to make masks for people in need, and so this is just a resource for you to use in order to do that. Original pattern comes from Craft Passion. It makes a much smaller personal use one, and the larger ones are intended to be covers for the N95s. If you have any questions, put those in the comments below. I can link back to our Facebook page. It's Care Masks for COVID-19, and we're also working with Make a Mask here in Austin, Texas. I encourage you to start a movement in your own town, but as always, be safe. And you can review our safety guidelines in our Facebook group as well. So thank you all for watching the tutorial, and happy sewing.